with a lot of canning recipes, you need to stick to the recipe. And these freezer jams and quick jams, they give you much more liberty to be creative, which I really love. So I can add herbs to it and turn, my strawberry jam into strawberry basil jam. I can use an infused sugar, maybe my infused rose sugar, and have strawberry rose jam. So it just gave me more liberty to play. Same thing with pickling, throwing in some lavender in my pickled carrots just totally transformed the flavor. It's a great place to wade into jamming and pickling without the introduction of the canner.
Welcome back to the Beet Podcast. I'm your host today, Jacques, and today we are going to be talking about food preservation, which is actually a really great time to do it because we are in the middle of summer. If you're like me, you might have 30 tomato plants, and there's only so many fresh tomatoes you could eat every single day, and you got to start preserving it. And so today we're going to have on Holly Capelle, who wrote Preserving the Seasons, a fantastic book that covers fruit, vegetable, flower, herbs, all sorts of different preservations and techniques. So welcome on, Holly. And why don't you let us know where you're growing and kind of what your gardening style is? Are you homesteading? Are you growing just a little flower garden? What's your setup?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I am a fourth generation Oregonian. I'm born and raised here in Portland. I did have a small stint in Wisconsin for a short time where I met my soulmate and brought him back here to Oregon with me, where we just started our life together, which includes this big garden that has evolved. It's actually a bit of our love story, to be honest. When we were young, nice. We, not a lot of money to do stuff and go entertain ourselves. And so we spent all of our time saving to buy a house. And then all of our time at that house, entertaining ourselves. And so this garden, it's been an evolution over 20 years, really slow.
Oh, okay. That's cool. So you've been developing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're raising 6 kids. We're both working full time. Out here, we're in zone 8B. So we're growing from about April until October. And we maintain a spring garden, a summer garden, a fall garden, and then we've got some things overwintering in the winter, but that's kind of our downtime out here. We're in the middle of the city here in kind of the burbs, and so we're homesteading in the burbs, if you will. We've got 9 chickens. Our garden has now evolved into over 16 raised beds. We have several in-ground growing areas. We're growing fruits, perennials, annuals, all kinds of stuff.
Wow, so that's pretty cool. In the suburbs, growing your own food, and sort of the setup of your garden over 20 years as it's evolved. Has it always been towards like growing food for preservation? Is that how you started off with your garden?
Yeah, no, it was just truly our entertainment together. And when we started realizing that maybe we might be kind of good at it, plants are surviving, we might be onto something. Then our first real goal was to grow a salsa garden. We just wanted to make our own salsa. And we did. And we couldn't believe how satisfying it was from starting from seed, growing the plants, harvesting it, and then creating something so delicious. We were hooked. So it started from the salsa garden, and now we have an herb garden, a kitchen garden, a medicine garden, a flower garden. It's insane.
That's awesome. I've always said to start a garden, I would always recommend a herb garden first. It's so powerful in the kitchen and for preserving and for eating and cooking. And yeah, I think actually our garden started off in the same way. It was really just as a way to spend time outside without having to really go somewhere.
Yes.
And also to build something, right?
Right.
To be at home and be able to enjoy your space more and get out of it. It's so great having the garden now. It's really interesting how even just creating our garden has entirely transformed how we interact with our home. Now we spend so much more time outside. We spend so much more time entertaining people out in the garden, having like little summer parties. It's been really wonderful. But one thing that I don't know why we've never really gone that deep into it, but we've never done that much preservation. Maybe part of the reason is that, being in San Diego, it is a very flexible season. So I do tend to have longer stints where I could grow things out and kind of space things out. But the biggest preservation I've done, you could probably see some behind me, is some casual like drying stuff of like some herbs and flowers. But the most I usually do is throw tomatoes in the freezer whole. So for me, it was great to actually see this book because it gives me a lot of ideas. Now, one of the cool things about, I like the way that you titled Preserving the Seasons, right? Because you get to save that like flavor of summer and savor it in the wintertime. And also you don't have to go buy a tomato that was grown in a greenhouse that doesn't taste like anything. You can instead like rely on your preserves and cook delicious things. So when you started doing the preservation, for you, was it like a way to kind of make your own better food at home? Was it to save money? Like all of the above? Like, I'm
Yeah.
just curious on what got you into it so deep.
Yeah, all of the above. It really started to get more interested in uh, making my harvest last as long as possible or getting the most out of them once we started to build a family and we started having our kids. That's when organic food at the grocery store was really becoming a thing. And I wanted that for them, but it was so expensive. It was really just not in my realm.
Yeah.
And so here I knew I had this bit of a green thumb and it was what we loved to do anyway. And so we just merged it and really just it took off. And we started to grow things we knew that the kids would love. And that was great. But like with any harvest, sometimes you go and you're picking all the berries and you bring them in and you get distracted and busy and whatever. And before you know it, you glance over at the berries and they're molded. And it's
I've been there many times.
devastating. And one day I just got sick of opening the fridge and seeing my beautiful harvest gone and wasted. And so I was just determined at that time to just start learning how to preserve, even if it was small handfuls at a time. Those of us growing in our backyards, we're not, hauling in pounds of berries a day like the farmers are. I'm coming in with a handful or two, and I can't really bake or make jam with that yet. And so I've just really gotten in the mindset and the habit of giving those a quick rinse, putting them on the cookie sheet and flash freezing really quick, and then adding them into a freezer safe container where I could just access these berries as I needed, and then use them when I had a big enough batch. Yeah, and then same thing, even like with leftovers, beyond the garden, just preserving my leftovers and the deals I was getting from the grocery store, my farmer market hauls. We have lots of you-pick farmers around here where I live, and we take advantage of that. It's organic food at reasonable prices, and I can freeze dry, dehydrate, freeze, or can them, to enjoy all year long. So yeah, this has just been an evolution for me.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing you mentioned, is like this idea of the quantity. And I've kind of fell into that trap a little bit too, where I'm like, oh, I only have this many. Is it really worth saving? And the freezer, I think, is the best hack into that.
It really is. Yeah. It's a great way to stock up. I mean, if you're freeze drying or getting into freeze drying, pre-freezing your bounty before just saves time when it comes to doing that in the cooler temperature days. Like right now, we're experiencing temps in the 90s. I'm not going to run that machine today, but I might go ahead and pre-freeze my blueberries so that when I am ready to freeze dry them, they're already, partially halfway there. So yeah, it's just little teeny things. And I think a lot of times when you're growing raspberries, say in the backyard, and you think, oh, I'd love to make jam, but I'm not, harvesting enough. If you start to gather those handfuls, of course, always eat a few berries each time, because there's something so sweet about enjoying that fresh harvest. But then take a little bit of it and set it aside as well for tomorrow. And that will be just so equally satisfying. And it will build up on you. Before you know it, now you've got plenty to make, jam with, or a sauce or marinade, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I really like about the way you've structured this book is that I don't know if this probably was some level of intentional, but the way that the chapters flow to me kind of feel like the first chapter is about freezing, which to me was kind of my entry in because
Right.
it seems like almost the easiest, right? It's for a lot of things, like my example for tomatoes, I literally just take my tomatoes whole and I put them in the freezer. Now it's preserved. So like, how could it get any easier than that? But the thing that I really like is that the way that you break down within that chapter is like, let's say fruits, you'll have like an apple versus like how you would do a peach. And you also introduced a new thing to me, which is maybe you could tell everyone at home what that is, but this idea of like dry pack versus liquid pack and sugar pack, that was something new to me that I didn't think about, the different ways I could preserve them in the freezer instead of just like chucking the whole thing in there and figuring out what to do later.
Yeah. So, first I learned how to preserve, and then I learned, I learned to follow it all the way through. What do I want to use it for? So once you kind of know, like, oh, I really want to freeze my berries to be able to use in cobblers or a pie, then maybe a syrup pack where you're adding it in with the sugars and all that. That's going to
Right.
be a wonderful way to turn that into a pie filling. If you're wanting to use those berries, say for smoothies or something like that, then you would want to dry pack them, which I talked about earlier, just throwing them on that cookie sheet to flash freeze them individually. That's going to give you frozen individual berries instead of one just big clump of berry.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
learned that one.
I've done that with bananas.
Yes, exactly. I've learned that by making the mistakes. And so that's what I really love about this book is I feel like, I've made all the mistakes. I've done it wrong. And I try to share all of those lessons in this book so that you don't even have to go down that road. You can just, preserve and save your harvest that you worked so hard to grow.
For me, like the advantage that I think of first for the freezer is that it's very easy.
Yes, it's
Is there some other kind of like,
accessible.
yeah, everyone has a freezer at home, probably. Like I can say that pretty confidently. Uh, and so is there like some major advantage to freezing as well besides being easy? Like to me, I've always thought of like maybe the preservation of like the nutrients or something like could be more peak. And also like what is like the downside of freezing? Like why would I go from freezing to say like drying, or in the future we'll talk a little bit about canning too. Like is there some major downside?
There's not really a major downside if you're doing it, correctly. And I would say, once you got your items frozen, if you're flash freezing, whatever, first, packaging is everything. So, to be packaging it correctly is going to get you that longest life. You'll avoid the freezer burn and the ice crystals and all those things that destroy. So you froze this beautiful bag of broccoli and you go to get it and it's just all an icy tundra. So proper packaging is really important. Freezing is an ideal way to preserve your produce. You
Yeah.
are preserving most of the color, most of the flavor, most of the texture. It's really close to fresh, as we all know. So it's great. I would say maybe the downfall would be if you don't have a large freezer and you're also trying to, keep frozen your weekly grocery haul or whatever, space might be an issue. And then also, I just really like to diversify what I preserve. If the power goes out,
That
I'm
makes
going to
sense.
lose everything in the freezer. And so I like to
Right.
also have some shelf stable options.
Yeah, that's a really good point, is that they kind of can achieve the same goal, but there is like a nice thing to have like a backup insurance, or yeah, like if you dry something like that could a store out of your way, like you don't have to jam up a freezer.
Right.
Maybe you could put it in a pantry somewhere. And also, yeah, you could use them in different things. Like you could even take maybe dried stuff with you on a trip, whereas like a frozen thing might not travel very well.
Right.
So that is like another interesting kind of way to think about it. One more thing I want to ask you about freezing before I ask you about some of the other methods is is there like when I think about freezing something like a cauliflower, do you find that like the texture, do you have to use it in a different way? Like is it does it kind of change it a little bit? Like when I'm trying to think of like how I would use a cauliflower and like roast it, can you pull it out of the freezer and roast it and have like the same effect?
Yeah. I would say, nothing is ever going to be like fresh,
That's fair.
so there's always that. But I would say the freezer is really close and that you can still grill, you can thaw. When you're thawing them, you're going to it's going to be obviously cauliflower. Whereas if you dehydrated cauliflower, it shrunk half of its size and you're rehydrating it now, it's not going to poof back up into this perfect little, cauliflower crown. You're going to want to use that one more in soups and stuff, for example.
Oh, okay.
So,
That makes sense.
so yeah, I would say your freezer is your best option for those like quick side dishes, vegetarian main dishes, still an option for roasting and grilling. It's really a versatile way to preserve your produce and beyond.
When it comes to the other methods, one of the other ones you mentioned is the no canning and sort of the quick pickling. And that is another one of those things that I kind of got into, I think maybe before even freezing. And my first example I could think of is we had so many green beans, we knew we couldn't eat them before they went bad. So we tried pickling some of them. And that was a really fun thing because they changed the flavor, sure, but then that also opened up a new opportunity for how to use it. Now, I think the thing that I think about pickling is, or no canning, is that it's very accessible. I think everyone at home pretty much has the basics you need to do something like that, right? Like you don't necessarily need anything special.
Yes, it doesn't really require special equipment, and you don't need large harvests either to accommodate
Yeah, that's the
that.
cool part.
You can use whatever you're hauling from your garden or your grocery store sales. And for me, the quick jams and stuff was a great option because I have six kids. I had so many little ones running around. And I really didn't want to be doing a lot of the canning and the jam making, and it was like dangerous to be, trying to deal with it all. So yeah, so a quick freezer jam where they could actually pitch in and help and mash berries and do all of that was totally my thing. And then also, with a lot of canning recipes, you need to stick to the recipe. And these freezer jams and quick jams, they give you much more liberty to be creative, which I really love. So I can add herbs to it and turn, my strawberry jam into strawberry basil jam. I can use an infused sugar, maybe my infused rose sugar, and have strawberry rose jam. So it just gave me more liberty to play. Same thing with pickling, throwing in some lavender in my pickled carrots just totally transformed the flavor. So yeah, it's a great place to wade into jamming and pickling without the introduction of the canner.
I really like this idea of like with the quick pickles and jams and stuff is that you don't have to like commit to some like, I have to fill like 6 jars and get the like canner going and I have to have enough and all that kind of thing. And you could change it up. You could do like 1 jar specific recipe, try that out, see if you like it, do another jar the next time. And my understanding with these things is that kind of the reason why you can be more flexible with like the flavors and the herbs and add-ins is that it's not like something you are preserving it, but it's not like, well, maybe in some cases it can be months, but it's not going to be like as long of a lifespan as say like properly canning or maybe even freezing in many cases, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, freezing, you're gonna get a good 9 months to a year
Okay.
on your items. And then for canning, it's about a year to 18 months. It's a year that they recommend, but anyone who cans knows you can squeeze past that a bit. And then for jam, for refrigerator jams, you've got a couple months for it to sit in the fridge. And for a lot of people, that's perfect. Just a couple of jars of pickles that you managed to save in July that you want to, enjoy in September. That's awesome. That's wonderful. And I think it's a really reasonable way to, to just get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Great way to get started. The other thing I should mention is that within your book, within these sections, is not just like a how to, but you also provide a lot of really fantastic recipes. So if you need a little help on the inspiration side, that's also very helpful. And like little mix and matches. One thing that I really liked in some of the sections, oh yeah, in the pickling, you had like this quick pickle partner table, which I am definitely going to reference. So like, let's say I want to pickle cucumbers. It'll be like cucumber and then add-ins, and it'll be a list of different herbs or things you could put in there. And that's super helpful for somebody who hasn't done it enough to have like a repertoire of recipes to pull from.
Yeah.
And like for something like that, I'm guessing for you, like you get to just get out in the garden, play around with what you have and see what works, like for things like this, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's wins and losses that that result in what works and what doesn't. And yeah, that's the beauty of it, is I really wanted to give people just sort of the framework for creating whatever it is that speaks to them, the flavors that they love, that they want to include. And canning doesn't give us a lot of that creative license. Um, but quick pickling and quick jams really do. And that's also why I love to do the boiling water canning and even the dehydrating and freeze drying. I am preserving myself ingredients instead of whole meals. I'm not really saving soups very much. I want to make the soup. So for me, I'm saving all the ingredients that I could put in the soup. That way, when it's time for me to make it, I'm making what I really feel like cooking instead of what I've saved. That vegetable soup in the cupboard.
Yeah, I like that perspective a lot because not only is it kind of give you more of that flexibility as you could do whatever it is you want with that ingredient, but it also like ensures that you get to use that wonderful vegetable or fruit or whatever you grew from your garden that tastes so much better and has like all the nutrition, and what went into it,
Yes.
how you treated it, like never covered it in like crazy chemicals or anything like that. And so to reach in and like pull out a jar of tomatoes instead of like a can from the store, like that's also really cool because now you have that flexibility. Like even with the frozen tomatoes, like I would pull them out of the freezer and maybe one day it goes into a soup. Maybe one day I make a tomato sauce. Maybe one day it's just like an added ingredient to something else.
Yes.
And it's really great to have that as an ingredient that I could pull in November, December, January, February, where I just refuse to buy tomatoes from the store because they're just so sad.
Yes.
And that ingredient, like having that ingredient sort of pantry of actual vegetables that you grew, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like that's ultimately flexible and definitely going to be the most delicious avenue for sure.
Definitely.
So
yes, it's all about options. It's all about a stocked pantry of options. That's what I like to say.
yeah, I've never actually thought about preserving like kind of in that way. It makes sense now that I think about it, but that is like now that as I go into preservation, that is going to be how I really think about it.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
how do I want to save these ingredients?
yeah, and I think that we've always kind of seen this from, a farmer's point of view, or, the country homesteader who has replaced their grocery shopping, maybe 100%
Yeah.
or 80%. I have not done that. I'm gardening in the city. I could work part-time at the grocery store. I feel like sometimes I'm there so often, I still need to get my flour and my salt and all these things.
Yeah.
So, and I've just found this balance of being able to grow my own food, preserve that, use it, but also I lean on the grocery store. Some days we order pizza. It's okay. It's about finding, I think, that balance that works for you. And a lot of us are not able to preserve, 30 jars of pickles at once. We're just not preserving that much. So I really wanted a book that spoke to you regardless of how it was you were getting that produce, whether you were going to that you've picked
Oh, sure.
farm and supporting your local farmers, or finding it on that the Sunday farmers market, or, the coupon sale at the grocery store, whatever, however you're doing it, there's still a means for you to enjoy some now and save some for later.
Yeah, I think that's a very healthy way to think about it. Maybe one of the things that might be intimidating for people going down this road is you don't have to be all in all the time. Like even just playing around with it every once in a while, or like you said, like that deal at the grocery store, maybe you find some really delicious peaches and it's a good price. Like you're like, oh, you know what? Let me go get some extra. I'll can them up or freeze them and use them later to make some pies or something like that. It's just having that option of flexibility is really key. Like, and choosing your battles. Like I have grown, for example, wheat in my garden before, but I know I can't give up enough space to grow enough wheat to get enough flour for our household. It's
Right.
just not going to happen. It'll just turn into a wheat garden. So, which is cool. I wish I had the space for that. If I had like 5 acres, maybe I could dedicate like a section for
Right.
just grains.
Sure.
But it's just a matter of like choosing like what is like the biggest impact thing that maybe you like to buy or that you really like to eat, and just choose those and kind of play with it. You don't have to replace your whole entire life with preserves, right? So
Exactly.
that's another important thing to remember. I'd actually love to talk to you about the canning a little bit more, because that's been one of those things that I've been a little bit intimidated by. I don't know if it's even fair to be as intimidated as I am, but you hear the classic stories of like exploding cans, or I think in terms of food safety, I now understand that if you follow these recipes that are proven and like certified in some way, it's really, you're almost certainly going to be fine, is how I'm going to say it. I'm not guaranteeing anything. But is there any reason for people to be as intimidated as they might be?
No. I mean,
Okay.
no, I mean, I totally understand. And I was the same. And I also just didn't want to do it, like I said, because I had all these little kids around and I was thinking, exploding jars. I can't do that.
Right.
I've never had a jar explode.
Okay.
Never. I've had a seal, not seal, but I've never had a jar explode. It's just a process. And I think just like you learn how to bake bread, you learn how to broil steaks, you learn how to can. So once you get the steps done, you will build confidence in that, and you'll realize that it's really just step 1, 2, 3, 4, and you got it. It's not difficult. What I am always a little leery of is like the modern homesteader now sharing maybe the tips and tricks from grandma so long ago,
Mm,
that just have been now proven to just not be safe, not be the best route to go. And I think
I
I
see.
know we all know grandma knows best. I'm not trying to say she doesn't, but I think if she'd had the studies that we've been able to have, in recent light, that she would have changed up her methods as well. So I always want to just have people be a little leery of the TikTok canners and the people sharing that. Just do your due diligence and double check those recipes and double check the methods that they're teaching. I see people a lot sharing the vacuum sealers, the jar vacuum sealers.
Oh,
Those are,
that's not the same thing at all,
it
right?
is absolutely not a replacement for canning, but they'll show it like it is, and they'll put their fresh berries in it, and they'll seal it up, and then think that that's gonna work, and it will not be stealth or shelf stable. Nothing about vacuum sealing is heating the food up to that high heat enough to be able to kill the bacteria in those jars. It's an ideal solution for dry goods like beans and pasta and rice and things like that, and it will lengthen the storage of those items. But again, it is not a replacement for canning. So I see sometimes those things and I cringe for people, because those are the things that blur the lines that make it scary. But otherwise, if you're
Yeah, that
working
makes
with a
sense.
trusted source, And, the National Center for Home Preservation is a wonderful source. A lot of colleges around our country have food preservation extensions, and they're the ones that are doing these constant studies and stuff, and are also a wonderful resource for people.
I know that's like the one thing I know about canning is that you should use tried and true, like certified recipes. And beyond that, I haven't really gone that deep. But I think this year, if I were to try it, it seems like doing tomatoes, as much as like it's convenient to put them in the freezer, I think it would be fun to try. Is that like a good one to kind of start off with? Is like just literally freezing some tomatoes? Or not freeze, sorry, canning tomatoes?
Yeah, so with the boiling water canning, which is what also known as water bath canning, which is the
And that's like no special equipment, right? It's just like a big pot and jars?
it's a canner. You need the canning
Okay.
pot. It's a big stock pot. It has a canning rack for all of the jars to go into,
Oh, okay.
and then also ideally a clear lid so you can see what's happening in there. And there's also a handful of tools you do need for canning, all listed in the book to get you going. So when you're boiling water canning, this is safe only for jams, fruit, pickled vegetables. These are high acid foods, and they can be safely canned in this method. Low acid foods like meats and vegetables that are not pickled require a pressure canner. And so that is a different canning method. And I do not cover that in the book just because I wanted to cover the easiest ways to preserve. And I felt like jumping into this canning method is really a great way to start. So yes, tomatoes actually can be water bath canned or boiling water canned with the addition of acid. So you have to add lemon juice
Uh,
to be able to balance that out. But there are many.
okay.
Yeah, it's actually very easy to can, and I go to my canned tomatoes so often. I'm making
Yeah.
sauce out of them. I'm throwing them in my stews and soups. They're my go-to. I love them.
All right. I'm going to try that this year
You can
because
do it.
yeah, because we filled the freezer and, that was great, but it's still a little bit of work to get them out. I think it'd be fun to do that work to get them into that can or jar and then be able to just use it straight up without having to like do the defrost and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I will definitely try that. I will give it a go.
I'm so excited for you because it's really a game changer. And when you've canned like 6 jars of tomatoes and you've got them sitting out waiting and you hear the little pop, pop, pop of the seals,
That
feels
sounds
so
satisfying.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It feels great. And
And
then you're
then,
putting them on the shelf, and if the power goes out, you've got a winter, where you lose power, and now your frozen stock has been compromised. You've got
yeah.
your shelf sustainable, items in your pantry, and you're so good to go. You're still having tomatoes.
Yeah, that would even be a fun gift for people maybe like here like take a jar of my tomatoes because I already have like a freezer full and so many.
Yes,
So yeah, that's a cool one.
wonderful gift.
It's true, like this book cover is very approachable sort of these methods. And I mean, one of the most classic behind me right now as an example of some is the drying. And there's like different sort of subsets to drying. Like I think you list one as like drying and then you have dehydrating separately. So how would you like explain drying versus dehydrating something for preservation?
So naturally drying, about 80% of like my herbs and flowers is my go-to. I prefer just slow, natural drying. It requires no special equipment other
Hmm.
than a line to hang, your herb bundles on, or a screen to lay them flat on. It takes a week or two to be able to have your herbs and flowers completely dry out. And the reason why I really like this method is because it retains most of the color, the nutrients, vitamins, and it actually intensifies the flavors. So, if you've added dried herbs to your meals and stuff before, you usually use half of the amount you would use of fresh, and that's just because those flavors intensify. I find with dehydrating, it's a great way to quickly get the flavors of a dried herb, but in the long run, they don't last as long as if you would have just slow dried them. I find that any sort of speed method um, shortens its shelf life.
Huh. That to me feels like I would have guessed it the other way around. So that's really, I don't know why. Like, I feel like by doing it quickly, you're like locking it in. But maybe in the process of doing it quick, you are losing something.
Right. It's kind
And
of
so,
zapping, that heat required in the
right.
dehydrator. You've got some heat, you've got the fan circulating and everything, but it is doing it in a quicker pace and so more is being lost in that process. So it can absolutely be done. If you do not have a space with good airflow away from direct sunlight where you can successfully naturally dry your things, a dehydrator would be the second best option.
I had a bunch of peppers towards the end of the season, and I decided I have some actually still behind me that I dried like in a more static way.
Oh, beautiful.
So these are just dried ahi peppers and I think some sunrise peach. But I also put some in the dehydrator because here in San Diego it could get a bit humid, and I had like some that were starting to rot and I felt like discouraged. So I put them in a dehydrator. And what I did after that is I immediately turned it into like a paprika powder, and we just used it as soon as possible. And that was incredible. If you haven't had paprika, there's, I'm sure, like a classic designation of exactly what it is,
Yeah.
but basically it's dried peppers. And when you do an assemblage of different peppers from your garden and you even mix in a couple hot ones, you could get some crazy unique flavor
Yes.
that I wish I could even replicate, because it's like a different batch every time. But it's so much fun and it's so delicious. That, and I think garlic scapes are the main things that I've used my dehydrator for. And the garlic scape powder was a delicious little addition that I just kind of add into meals as I think about it. And it adds this like really nice subtle flavor, which I really appreciate.
Yes, I have a recipe in the book actually for a garlic scape
Yes.
sauce. It's like an Alfredo that we love around here.
Oh,
It's so good. So I also do the
that does
same.
sound
I
really good.
love to dehydrate my scapes. I also pickle them if I've got a lot. I didn't have enough this year to be able to do both, so I just went with
Mm.
powder. But I've had years before where I've had so much that I was also able to get a jar of them pickled, and those are amazing, chopped up and used like little capers.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've always kind of described them as like a garlicky green bean
Yeah.
kind of hybrid. Like it has some of that flavor in there that's a little familiar, but they are really great and they are a specialty, short season kind of thing. Uh, so then in the other world of drying, I have used a freeze dryer before. I know you talk about it in this book. Kevin has a freeze dryer, and in the past we did do some trials of like different fruits and even tomatoes. And I found it so interesting because like a slice of freeze-dried tomato, it still retained like the tanginess, the sweetness. Of course it was different, but a lot of that flavor was still in there. And it was a lot more than I thought. I thought some of that would be lost. Some of like the flavor would become more subtle. But is that something that you find? Like, is there a time where you reach for the freeze dryer over another option for a particular reason?
Yeah, it really just depends on what I'm trying to have on the shelf. So, for example, like with the tomatoes, you say, I like actually the freeze dryer for powders. And so,
That makes
or
sense.
like travel food, or snacks. So I will do a
Ah,
bunch of tomatoes and then I will turn them into a powder that I can then use for soups and stuff later, because freeze drying also really intensifies the flavor again. Yeah. And it holds the color. It's funny, like I've had jars of peas that they look very faded out. And then when you go to pour the boiling water over them, they just magically turn into the most beautiful color green. And then over a few minutes, you know, plump back up and just become delicious. And so it's kind of a magical machine, I'd say.
And the stuff lasts a really long time when stored right, correct? Like
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
like
I
years.
years. You can vacuum seal it in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber and feed it to your grandkids, 25 years later.
Wow. Okay, so that's like a deep preservation method then.
It is
That's
a
pretty
big
cool.
time preservation. And really, again, it's all about like, what are you trying to do? Are you wanting to preserve
Yeah.
food? Are you a big traveler, a hiker, a camper? Then you love this. We love it for making our own organic dog food for our dog and snacks for our
Hmm.
dog. Also, snacks for the kids. I can add butterfly pea powder to yogurt and then make little yogurt drops that they can take and just melt in your mouth snacks. Applesauce can be freeze dried on a tray and then just broken up and put into the bag. Add a little teeny bit of water to it and it comes back to life. So it's definitely and then baby food. If you've got a lot, I wished I had a freeze dryer when I was swimming in babies because I would have made the best baby food. So yeah, again, if it fits into your life, then it's definitely worth the expense. It's an expensive preservation option since it's one of the newer,
Right.
like our generation, we know this is astronaut food.
Yes,
But
the astronaut ice cream I grew up on.
that's
Or not grew
right.
up on, but grew up wanting to try and eat more often.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, if it fits into your life, then it will be a wonderful tool for you. And if none of those things are things that you're interested in, you can still use your dehydrator and have a well-stocked dry pantry.
Yeah, I like this framing that you've mentioned throughout this, which is that these methods, like they all have their purpose, and a lot of it is not necessarily like one's better than the other. It's like, what are you trying to do? How are you trying to use this food that you're preserving? Like, what's your intention and goal from it? And within that, you could find that method. And that's like a great way to think about it.
Yeah, and also like zero waste, trying to use every bit
Yeah.
of it. So, for example, when you go to can your first tomatoes this year and you remove all of the skins, throw those skins in your dehydrator and dry them up and turn those skins into a powder. And now you've got canned tomatoes at the ready and also tomato powder ready. So you've got two for one. I do the same thing with
Yeah.
peaches. So I remove the peach skins, I can my peaches, and then I dehydrate those skins. They smell amazing. Add them to smoothies,
Whoa.
add them to muffins.
Yeah.
It's just another flavor level for you to play with in your kitchen,
I mean, that's really what it's all about is
right?
finding these flavors. I love it. I mean, that's why I garden and grow food is once you eat that, I mean, tomato is a perfect example. Once you eat that tomato out of your garden, you're like, oh, I didn't even know what a tomato was.
Right,
Like
right.
now I see the light and the flavors are just so much better and so incredible and so much fun that, yeah, you're totally right. Like that is another thing to play with and use in the kitchen and get creative with. Sort of like after we get through like these classic methods of preservation, there's like this yet other part, which is like this infusions and syrups that you mentioned. And that is another one that we've dabbled in a little bit here at home with like olive oil, sort of like herby infusions and things like that. And vinegars is one that it's another one what I've really wanted to try to get into. But when thinking about these, like one of the things you mentioned is this idea of like the sort of quick, similar to I guess dehydrating versus drying, is like you could do these infusions sort of passively, or you could do them in a more fast way. And can you like, for example, like let's say somebody wanted to make a herby olive oil. Can you explain like what that difference is between those two? When you do it like fast versus like the slow method, I think you said it was like the hot,
Yeah.
one was
Well,
called hot.
yeah, each infusion that I feature in the book has various ways that you can get there. And I am sharing an option for fast fusions and slow infusions, like you said. So you can do it where you're kneading it that evening and you're going to want to heat it up. And you heat
Right.
that oil slowly with your herbs and let them marry, let them cool off, and then come together. Or you can do a longer infusion where you're putting them in the jar and you're sticking them in a cool dark spot and you're just leaving them for a week or so and letting that just really seep in. Especially with vinegars, several weeks of infusions turns a white distilled vinegar into an absolute ingredient game changer in your kitchen. I mean, vinaigrettes, everything in your house will be custom. Like you'll have your own signature vinaigrettes, you'll have your own signature marinades, using your lilac infused vinegars. And my favorite is purple basil. It turns into a
Interesting.
beautiful color, and then from there you can make it into a vinaigrette, and it's like this gorgeous pink color, all from your garden.
Yeah, that's really cool. One of the things that jumped out was the tarragon, because I have a good patch of tarragon going right now.
Ooh,
And I've had tarragon vinegar before, but I've never made it. And I think that's going to be the vinegar sort of infusion that I go into next. Because, man, like a tarragon vinegar used in the right place is so interesting and delicious. And that's definitely one that I'm going to try out. Because, like I said, we've done these like infusions. I've never really thought about them or how varied I could get with them. I've always kind of in the end always just been like, whatever, I'll just put the herbs in the dish instead
yeah,
of doing it the other way. But it seems like you could develop more layers of flavor by doing it this way.
yeah,
And that's also really appealing. And
yeah,
like sometimes you can't, like, let's say if I make an herby oil, I can now put that on my roast potatoes and my herbs won't burn, but I could still get all that flavor in there. And that is exciting because
yeah,
oftentimes lately I feel like I'm like, this would be so much better if I put all this thyme and stuff, but I don't want it to just burn. It's going to get a little bit gross. So that's actually something that I just thought of that got me excited because I love roasted potatoes. And if I could sneak in those herbs in an easy way without having to micromanage it, that sounds fantastic. So I
definitely.
guess I'm making a tarragon vinegar, water canning some tomatoes. I'm going to be doing some like roast potato infused, or not potato infused, but olive oil
Add in a
ready
little
to
of
go for
that
my potatoes.
garlic scape powder in there.
There you go. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
looking good.
And the last one that I definitely want to try is that you have this section on syrups. And that's another thing that I've never really, for some reason, thought to do. But every once in a while, if I go to a coffee shop, they'll have something like a rose infused like cappuccino. And I'm like, I kind of want to try that. And I try it. I'm like, wow, it's actually really good. And it's not that difficult to make, right? Like to
Right.
do a simple syrup with infusion, like that's something that really anyone with any level of cooking experience can probably pull off, right?
Oh, absolutely. It is beginner level. I mean, it's so simple to do. Actually, so many of these infusions are so simple to do. And again, you don't need a garden. You could be in an
Yeah.
apartment with a pot of herbs and want to find a wonderful way to utilize them and turning, your little herb garden into a garden infused vinegar to splash onto vegetables, to toss into some potato salad. If you've infused apple cider vinegar, say like with roses or wild violets, you can actually use that as a face
Oh,
toner. Which I have been
oh,
known to do.
interesting.
Splash a little in my food and wash my face at the same time.
Multi-purpose. That's
Yeah,
cool. I
absolutely.
didn't even think
Always
about
trying to
that.
get everything I possibly can out of everything. You know?
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, but it's
Wow.
it's just a really fun way. So again, like the person living in the apartment that really wants to make like custom delicious ingredients but does not have room in a pantry to like be preserving everything. Infusions are a wonderful way to go. You can have your seasonal syrup in the fridge. You can have a quick jam made. You can have herb salt.
Mm.
Oregano salt is literally my favorite. I put it
Oh, that
on
sounds interesting.
everything. Some herbs, like it's a green, it turns out to be green when you mix it all together. It has this beautiful little shade of green. I'll mix in some edible flowers when I do my salt infusion. So I'll get a pink salt and a blue salt and a purple. It's so much fun. And then I'll use those colored
Oh,
salts, those herb salts and infused oils, like in the simplest ways, perhaps like a burrata, and I'll sprinkle it with my herb salt
ooh,
and then the herb oil all over it. Make the homemade
yeah.
crackers in my cookbook, and girl, you are living it. You
I
are
have to say,
living.
like, one of my favorite, it's like a little bit, I don't even know what word to use for this, but one of my favorite things about having like the garden and this delicious food is kind of like the flex that you could have on your guests when they come
Yeah.
over. They're like, what is this? Or like, oh, that's like the tarragon peach vinegar infusion I made the other week. And like, oh yeah, that's like my seasoned salt that I made from herbs in the garden. And they're like, wow, I can't buy this anywhere. This is incredible. I love that feeling. It's kind of just like opening the door to people in terms of like what possibility you could have at home. Like a lot of these things, like you mentioned, like they're not hard. Sometimes you just have to get started.
Yeah.
But especially with like the simple things like these infusions of vinegars and oils, like you could blow people's like head off with like the flavors
Yeah.
just
Like
on a
you were
simple little
never,
addition like that.
yeah, you were never just having lemonade at my house. It's going to be like a
No.
lilac lemonade, a lavender
Yes.
lemonade, you
Yeah.
know,
I'll
something.
be like, oh, can you go over to that bed and pick some of that Tulsi basil and throw it in that lemonade? And like, it's just like, they're like, wow, this is crazy. And
Isn't
it's
that
it's
good?
not unattainable. It's not, you don't need a lot to do that kind of stuff.
And I love
Um,
it so much. I share this feeling with you. I love it so much, but
yeah,
it's not something I can even like monetize. Like people always say to me, like, why don't you sell those things? Like,
I know.
I
I
honestly,
know.
I make them out of so much love and I gift them. There is just
Yes.
nothing better than to give your friend, a container of lavender syrup and know that they're going to love it, and it's special made. They know that you grew the lavender, you took the time to create the syrup, and then to give it away. It's just it's a full circle of feels, and I love it so much.
It actually reminds me of a story of an oil infusion I forgot I did that I kind of randomly did. Is I was trying to smoke all these peppers that I had, these leftover peppers, and I put them in there and I forgot about it. And they kind of singed and got a little roasted. I was like, oh, I can't save these to use it. So I was like, you know what? Or they got too dry. Like they got beyond useful at that point. So I just covered it in like a bath of like avocado oil, put it back in there for a little bit, pulled it out and strained it. And that avocado oil had like this crazy, like smoky and peppery flavor. And I gave a little bottle to a friend and he like still asks me about it. He's like, do you have any more of that? I'm like, that was just like a one-off. I don't even know exactly what I did there,
I'm telling
but
you, some
he
of the
still thinks
best
about it.
creations I've made were from an accident.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
And that's
I
how
get
I
it.
that's how
And
I learned about making fruit chips in the dehydrator.
I saw you mention that in the book and I was like, I'm gonna come back to this because I was trying to think of like fruit chips. So it's not gonna be like a gooey leather stuck in my teeth. It's like a different,
It is
it's
a
like a
full-on
crispier thing.
crunchy chip. It is so good.
Yeah.
It's like candy, and you don't even
Yes,
need to
that jumped
add.
out at me.
Yeah, you can control how much sugar and whatever. But that was really born out of me doing fruit leathers for too long. I forgot my machine was on.
There you go. Yeah.
And then I was like, what is
The
this? And everyone loved
like, oh,
them.
it's
And
pretty
like,
good.
can you make
Yeah.
those again, Mom? And so then, of course, we started to like experiment with different flavors. And then from there, I can take the fruit chip and grind it in a coffee grinder and then come up with this colorful powder. And then I turn, like, say, that raspberry powder into a pink frosting or pink glaze or whatever. So I
Oh,
use
very cool.
my powdered fruits as natural colorant a lot in my foods.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense too.
Again, all just born
And
out of doing stuff wrong.
right, sometimes it's like, well, I have all this stuff. Like, what am I gonna do? Let's just figure something out.
Yep.
So after, like, in the other nice thing about this book that I think makes it really useful for especially somebody just getting started is at the end of it, you also have like this big section of across like every meal you could think of, from like snacks to desserts to lunches and breakfasts and dinners, how to actually make some things using those preserves. Because I think that's another classic thing that a lot of gardeners are like, oh, I grew okra for the first time. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? Like,
Right.
how do I use it? Like, what am I, like, I did it, but now what? Like, I have all this stuff. I don't have any idea of how to get started. And so I think even just having that as like a basis for how to get started in using these things, you could then be inspired and riff off of it and
Yes.
kind of go your own way. But it's just good to have like a foundation to work from. And so I think like for anyone, even like myself, who's trying to get into more of this preserving, this like really does cover the bases of getting started. And the book is Preserving the Seasons, which I'm definitely going to have fun looking through here and trying to think of different ways. Like right now, I'm actually having tons of tomatoes, which is why I bought up the tomatoes, is I'm like, it's too early to start throwing them in the freezer. Like they're going to be growing for another like 3 or 4 months before I even access those. So I'm going to do last ditch tomatoes in the freezer. And this year I'm going to try to do the water canning for the ones that I'm pulling now that I'm getting overwhelmed with. But yeah, this was a very fun conversation and also inspiring, and to try to figure out like how I could now expand my preservation skills. And thank you for coming on and for writing this book and sharing with us today. Because I think everyone at home who has a garden, or even like you mentioned, if you don't have a garden and you are trying to save more food or like make the most out of those deals, preserving is a great way to do it. So thanks for coming on, Holly. And just for everyone to know, you also are on like social media, Instagram at Big Family Living. The book, Preserving the Seasons, definitely check that out. And yeah, thanks for coming on today and sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast talking with you, and I can't wait to see all the things that you preserve.
Yeah, I'm going to have to actually share it so that I could keep myself honest here.
Yeah.
So if I don't share any canning tomatoes, like call me out on it, guys, and I will be sure to do it.
We're gonna circle back with you on this one. There is a spot at the back of the book there's a couple journal pages where people can, keep track of their own recipes, their own creations, their own ideas. Use mine as just like you said, the jump off point, and then continue to just be creative in the kitchen, and don't let making a mistake or getting burnt or not tasting great stop you. Like, learn and then switch it up. Just never.
And maybe find a use for it, like the oil or those fruit chips, like maybe it's a silver lining underneath.
Exactly. Preserving is for everyone. So yeah, find what fits for you and do it up.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly.
Yeah.